What's up, guys? Andrew here, back at you with another one. And today I'm going to be reviewing the 1963 Alfred Hitchcock classic, The Birds. So, guys, before we get started, I have something kind of embarrassing to confess to. Until the other day, I had never seen Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds. It's one of those movies I'd never gotten around to. A lot of what I'd review here on Drew Reviews is, 80s, 90s, 2000s, going as far back as the 70s, like Beneath the Planet of the Apes. I go back to Universal monster movies like The Wolfman, and I love those. But, everything kind of there in the middle, 50s and 60s, I don't have a whole lot of knowledge in. So hopefully we get through this review okay. I want to thank the couple of you, including my friend Trevor, who's like, hey, I want you to do The Birds. As I really did enjoy this movie quite a lot. Of course, The Birds, I believe it was Alfred Hitchcock's fourth movie, if I can recall correctly. And, it stars Tippi Hedren as Melanie Daniels, and she's kind of this San Francisco socialite, and she goes to this pet store, and she meets Mitch there, and she instantly, just kind of falls head over heels in love with him. Finds out where he lives, and he lives in this town called Bodega Bay, California, a little ways up the coast. And of course, she goes modern day stalker on him and follows him up there. And I have to say, that was kind of a brave choice by Hitchcock, I'm assuming, because, this is before women's liberation, right? So, 1963, to have a movie where a woman, goes and pursues a man like this, I assume was a pretty brave idea. So, of course, she goes up there, and the first person she meets was Mitch's ex-lover. I believe her name was Annie Hayworth. And Annie kind of knows what she's up to up there seeing Mitch. And so she gets in kind of with the family. And, of course, the mother, Lydia, doesn't trust her at all. And so there's all this character development here in the beginning. And it's at this point in the movie, my wife looked at me and she goes, isn't this supposed to be about birds attacking? And I was like, yes, honey, it's about birds attacking. But they have to build up characters, get some character development in there so you care about these characters being attacked by the birds. And the character development in this movie is really good. You really feel for these characters. A young Veronica Cartwright plays Mitch's little sister in this. And of course, she's screaming and crying like she is an alien or, Invasion of the Body Snatchers later on. Of course, later on, the birds do start to attack. They're at the school. And that's a really tense scene. I like that scene there whenever you've got Melanie sitting, smoking a cigarette on the bench, waiting for the children to get out, and the birds start, accumulating on the playground equipment behind her. And each scene, there's more and more birds. Alfred Hitchcock just built a whole lot of tension there. And of course, they're at that diner, where all the birds attack, and she's in the phone booth, and things are blowing up. The guy puts the cigarette out at the gas station. Just a very tense scene. I really appreciated that scene. And after all that character development, you needed something like that to really jump out and attack you. But it's at that point where this movie, really kind of gets vicious and nasty. You got birds attacking little kids. And I remember seeing stills of this, growing up. And I remember thinking, oh man, the birds, I don't know the effect they're used where they're drawn in or whatever. Oh, they look fake or whatever. But when you're actually watching this, I saw it on Peacock, a really good version of it. To me, those effects still kind of hold up. And it never once took me out of the movie and thought, oh, that looks weird or whatever. So, yeah, if you've got Peacock and you've not seen The Birds or not seen The Birds in a while, be sure and check it out. Performance-wise, everybody is really good in this movie. I never once looked at somebody's performance and said, oh, they're acting. Like right now I'm doing Fridays, the Friday the 13th movies. And some of these young actors they have, you're like, they're acting right there. None of that in this movie. And most of the actors in this movie, whether it's Melanie Daniels or Mitch or Lydia, they act with a dignity about them. And I think maybe that's missing in our movies today, because everybody's, cussing and swearing and going on. These characters do have a dignity about them. So you do care what happens about them later on in the movie. I like the town of Bodega Bay in this movie. It's a character unto itself. And I love whenever the setting of a movie becomes a character of the movie. Whether it's there at that school, there's that scene at the beginning where she gets a boat from the boatman and rows across, and you're seeing that long shot across the lake. And I just absolutely love this setting of this movie, which I believe The Fog was shot up there in Northern California as well. fairly close to the same place this was shot. And that's another one where the setting just becomes a character unto itself. As I said earlier, I like the suspense a lot in this movie. That whole last act where they're trapped in their own house and they can hear the flapping up above and the birds are trying to break in everywhere. That's just creepy, man. Very well done by Mr. Hitchcock there. And, that last scene where she wakes up all by herself and she goes up there and there's that huge hole in the ceiling and the birds are getting to her and Mitch has to, get that door shut. That's a really cool scene. But my favorite scene in the movie is that last scene where they get in the car. Ooh, I just got goosebumps thinking about that last scene. Where they get in that car and they drive off, and everything's kind of monochromatic looking. There's a bird right there in the foreground as the car's taking off. That scene, just kind of shows that there may not be hope out there for them, especially after what they did to the town and their house. And that's one thing I like about this movie. There are no answers to why the birds actually attacked these people. And the fact that it's ambiguous, me and ambiguous endings, like Total Recall, I love movies like that make you have to draw up your own conclusions and use your brain just a little bit and don't just spell everything out for you. I love that it was open ended and, that this birdemic maybe, you know, all the way down the coastline. There's very little about this movie that I actually didn't like. I guess you could say the driving scenes where she's going to Bodega Bay. There's the green screen behind her. You could say that looks kind of phony, but even huge budget movies like what Sean Connery was doing, Doctor No and From Russia with Love and Goldfinger at the time, they had that. And like I've said in other reviews, movies like Avatar that rely so much on technology are going to be so dated in a few decades. And so, you look at that and you're like, whatever. But that's really the only thing in this movie that I can kind of look at and snicker at. But if that's the only negative point in this movie, that just tells you how highly I thought of the birds. But I do enjoy this movie a lot. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of kicking myself because a few years ago we had this theater in our town reopen. It's a 1920s or 30s era theater, and it closed, I believe, the year before or the year I was born. So my entire life up until my 40s, it was closed. One of the first showings they had was of the birds, and I probably couldn't have got tickets anyways. But now after seeing this movie, I wish I'd got to see it in such an iconic local theater like that. Overall, I'm going to give the birds a 7.8 out of 10. I think it's right around that 7.75 range as far as I rate movies. I don't think it's quite an 8, but I do really appreciate it. And, Alfred Hitchcock, he did some great things before here, like North by Northwest and Psycho and Vertigo, and he'd do some great things afterwards. But yeah, The Birds, I really appreciate. And if you haven't seen it in a while, check it out. Like I said, it's on Peacock. I'm sure you'll appreciate it too. So guys, as always, I'd like to thank you for watching this review. I've got a couple of other channels that I'm a part of. I've always been a part of Macho Movie Madness. It supersedes even your reviews. Me and Brandon Smith do M3 Wrestling. So check out both of those here on YouTube. We do a lot of cool stuff over there. This movie was from 1963. So coming up next, I got something way more recent. I got Willy's Wonderland starring Nicolas Cage coming next week for you guys. So that is a very fun movie. I don't know how you all feel about that, but we'll talk about that next week. If you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, I'm Andrew, and I'll see you down the line.